It is just like this truth that the less you know, the more you think you know. And the more you know that you don't know. Same thing with connections and networks, that the more people you get to know, the more people you come to think of that you would like to get to know, because of introductions, because of people they hang out with, because of exposures to new environments and worlds that you have never seen. And then step by step, you might get involved in those networks and get to know new people, and they present, like rings on water, ever more networks.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Connect with Confidence podcast, or possibly welcome for the first time. This is actually a first-time guest of the podcast, Dr. Niklas Myhr from, California and from Sweden. So welcome, Niklas.
Thank you, Kerrie. It's an honor to be invited to your show, and I'm looking forward to chatting.
Thank you. And even as I introduced you, I thought, did I pronounce your name correctly?
That was as good as it gets, if it's not a native Swede. Niklas Myhr.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So we know each other on a first name basis, and so grateful for our connection through the Asia Professional Speakers Singapore Association. Met face to face once or twice, and since then online. So I love talking to you. I feel like I'm always learning something from the social media professor, and whether it's your presentations or just our chats. So we are going to dive into just a whole lot of interesting conversation, because I know that that's guaranteed when we get on the call.
Well, first of all, it's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I almost hardly distinguish between online and offline interactions given this Zoom interface. And as long as you stay connected regularly, I think it's not that important anymore to meet in person, but I very much look forward to the opportunity when it presents itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much. And I really loved, especially over the past year, we've connected on Zoom monthly in a mastermind, but also you put out this great invitation to a few business owners that you knew to connect with some of your students at Chapman University there in California. So you are a great connector. And one of the things that I want to talk about today is, okay, there's a couple of main things. There's the social media, like how do we connect confidently on social media? And that is something that you're teaching people and equipping people all the time. But also the aspect of connecting cross-culturally. So can we just go back to maybe your earlier days? Tell us about traveling internationally and connecting in different countries. And have you lived in other countries besides the US and Sweden?
Sweden and the US are the ones that have been sort of, quote, permanent homes, even though I've been traveling a lot. I was fortunate to grow up in a family in northern Sweden where we took a couple of trips internationally most years, and driving through Europe primarily, and just getting to know the ski resorts and southern France. And I fell in love with France as a 9-year-old. And what I discovered was that connecting with people required reading their patterns and mannerisms, and also the language. And I tried to learn French as a 9-year-old, which wasn't very successful, but still working at it. But I think it was this curiosity that drove me to actually keep exploring on my own after the family wouldn't travel with me everywhere, and backpacking around the world. So I made it to Australia and doing exchange student year to the US before I moved to America. And I've always been driven to what's on the other side, and how can you meet people? How do they operate? And what is it that makes them tick? And so I've been very much a curious person. I think that is the key ingredient to actually building relationships, being genuinely curious about how other people think and communicate.
Oh, thank you. I love that. And I wonder, when you say that, you've been really curious, has your curiosity been satisfied, or has it grown because you're connecting with so many people in so many different cultures?
Absolutely. It is just like this truth that the less you know, the more you think you know. and the more you know, the more you know that you don't know. Same thing with connections and networks, that the more people you get to know, the more people you come to think of that you would like to get to know. because of introductions, because of people they hang out with, because of exposures to new environments and worlds that you have never seen. And then step by step, you might get involved in those networks and get to know new people, and they present like rings on water, ever more networks.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. And so tell me, have you always been confident to connect with people who are different from you, or has that grown as you've pushed yourself out of a comfort zone?
I've been always labeled an extrovert, but of course, it's been situations where I've been hesitant to approach somebody as well, like everyone has experienced. And it is, of course, depending on the context and importance, or the level of confidence that you think they will care about you, that determines whether you will feel confident or not. I think that people that are unlike you, it is like at University of Virginia, for example, I was invited to the Black Student Association annual holiday ball, and I went there and discovered I was the only white person there. And then I was like, first of all, very surprised that I was the only one who showed up to their holiday party. Yeah. And secondly, I became very self-aware of how different I was. And I was like realizing that other people experience this every day. And then I felt like everyone was observing me, and I felt that what do I do about this? But then I relaxed and think that these are just people, and it's not just be yourself. That's often what you fall back on.
That's the best thing to fall back on. Yeah. Isn't it? That's like such a great tip. If we could just be ourselves and recognize that everybody's, a person too. That's fantastic. So when, I was just going to ask you about when you've had to call on some courage to go meet some people, and I guess you were thrown into that situation without realizing, but can you think of other times where you've had to really step up to go meet somebody you wanted to meet?
Well, another occasion was that I had the fortune of meeting a now celebrity in my world of digital marketing called Gary Vaynerchuck, that many of your listeners may be familiar with, depending on if they're into entrepreneurship and digital marketing. But he's sort of a rock star in my world. And I had a good fortune of seeing him when he was speaking in front of 50 people and coming to Orange County where I live, and get to know him. And then he grew bigger, and I interviewed him on a stage in Sweden, and then he got even bigger. And then I saw like this cohort of fans around him, like groupies surrounding him like a rock star in social media marketing world. And I thought, this is awkward. I know this guy, and I knew him before, but these people are treating him like a rock star. But maybe he is. But then I went up to him and I gathered some courage and thought that, just like Moses, let the Nile divide. I told people, step aside. The social media professor is here. I need to talk to this guy, Gary. And then I stepped up to him and said, I know that you're a skeptic about higher education, but since we know each other, would you give me a chance to intern for you? And I will learn what my students should know when they come out of my class. And he said 100%. And I was happy that I gathered the strength to do that, because then I could go to New York and do a so-called reverse internship to learn how the 20-year-olds operate in a digital agency, and then have fun and get to know people and see what makes them tick. So, and that put me in a position in the classroom to know what my students need to know before they get there.
That's fantastic. And such a great opportunity for you to be able to learn, but also for you to be able to take that back and share it. So I think your students are quite privileged in having a professor who will put themselves out there to go learn, the latest and come and bring it back. That's really cool. And I saw that, you've mentioned it before, connecting with the Prince of Monaco and helping his government with social media. So how did you make that connection?
Well, that was different because I mentioned that it's depending on context. Had I seen an advertisement that the Prince of Monaco was assembling a digital advisory commission for the principality and looked for people, I would never even have thought about applying to put myself in that context, if I had even seen it. But it was the other way around. In marketing, we call it inbound marketing, which is instead of you trying to find people to sell to or make yourself available or offer services to, inbound marketing is when you become present online and people search for somebody like you, answering questions like the questions that you answer. They might find you instead. And it is obviously less less stressful if they ask me if you're interested. In that case, it was even that I thought it was a spam mail from a Nigerian prince or something like that. So I almost deleted the email when when the principality looked for the social media professor. But it was real. So I've been to Monaco twice and sat around the table with a very distinguished group of experts, and most of the other people had Wikipedia pages written about them, and then they invited me, but they chose to, and I accepted. Then I had to step into my greatness, as they say in America, and get out of this imposter syndrome, which is when you think that you don't belong. Instead, say, here I am. I offer my perspectives, and they invited me back, and it was a fantastic time.
Yeah, well, congratulations, because being invited back is the key thing, isn't it? That's a good indicator that you were supportive and helpful in their endeavors.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to follow what's going on, and I think once you get there and get through the formalities, you also realize that even Prince is just a regular person. I talked to him like I talked to you when we had a cocktail out on the balcony, and well, of course, he's got a different experience, but we could talk about different things. About he could point out where the Monaco Grand Prix went from the balcony, and it was like, okay, yeah, I've heard about it. I've seen it on TV. But he was very pleasant and very humble, and I was impressed that he actually wanted to listen to people around the table and actually take input, and with his team as well, of course.
Yeah, that's lovely. And I'd love to talk a little more about, inbound marketing, whether people are in business or not. It's about people connecting with you because of your reputation, because of something that you've done, or because of people that you're connected with. And I remember the first Asia Professional Speakers Convention I went to, David Avron was speaking, and he had his book called It's Not Who You Know, It's Who Knows You. And I really loved that concept, because I think if we are, sharing, and there's a lot of things, as we've talked about before, a lot of things I could be doing online if I had more time or interns. But yeah, if we are sharing who we are online, then people find us. So can you maybe give us a few tips around how we can do that well?
I think that you can show up in two main dimensions. One is in terms of what content you share, whether it's written content, audio content like a podcast, or video or images on different social media platforms, and you have a number of them, of course. What you show up with in terms of content, so that if people search for either they have never heard of you and they search for things you talk about, and Google is now indexing podcasts, and they're indexing YouTube videos, or just transcribing them, and basically, even if you don't provide a transcript, and if you write, of course, they will find what you're talking about. So sometimes you will talk about things that people are looking for answers to. In other cases, they may have heard of you a little bit, and they might scout you out, and they will take a it's not just about making the first impression of being found. You need to also break through that trust barrier. Do they have it? Do they actually like what they see? If they dig deeper, if they read 5 blog posts or watch 5 videos, and not just this first glance. So that's how you show up in content-wise. The second dimension is, who are you connected to? This matters too. And there's like, if you are connecting with somebody who has no mutual friends to you, you have less of a chance of getting a response than if that person on the other end sees that we have many friends in common. And of course, it could matter what friends in common. And you can see, of course, an introduction would be even better. But now in social media times, it's often automatically presented on various platforms. Oh, if somebody's connecting with me and I see that, oh, this woman knows Kerrie Phipps, she must be legit. Sometimes we overtrust that, but it's at least the other dimension that is not to be ignored. It's not just about the content you throw up there. It's also about who you know, and of course, who will vouch for you is even better if they have a testimonial or introduction.
Yes, yeah, and something that I noticed that really stands out to me with LinkedIn, for example. So I've opened up your LinkedIn page, and I would encourage all of our beloved listeners to check out Niklas's page. So we'll put that in the links. So we have 142 mutual connections, Niklas.
Oh, wow.
but what stands out to me is activity. So the first three things that show up automatically, you've commented and said, congratulations, Christopher, looking forward to ... And then the next one is Niklas commented, I love your unapologetic, contagious enthusiasm, Lauren. And then the third one is, thanks for sharing, Andrew. I'm glad you got to experience this trip. And so all three of your latest activity is you commenting on other people's activity. So you didn't know that I was going to check that out and share that today. But
No.
That tells me if you were sending me a friend request, I would see that you're not just putting your own content out there and just saying, hey, everybody, look at what I'm doing. You are connecting, you're congratulating people, you're encouraging and thanking people. And so I would see that and go, oh, wow, okay, they're a legit connector. They're interested in what their community is doing, what their online community is doing. And so we notice those things, don't we?
Well, I'm happy that you picked up on that, because while I had not known that you would check my profile out here, that's what I tell my students, is that if you click on that activity section on LinkedIn and it says that you have 0 activities in the last 90 days, not even a like of somebody else's post, let alone no comments, no posts of your own or articles, that shows that you're treating LinkedIn more as a static place where you post your resume and perhaps you lurk and see what other people say. But it's an opportunity lost if you're not even commenting on other posts and connecting with them and show up in their lives. Because you don't have to be that systematic and only get in touch with them when you need something. That is sort of the key. Don't be that guy. Chris Brogan used to say, when I listened to him speak in 2009, he came to Chapman University, and Chris Brogan is a big time, long time blogger, and or he was a blogger before it was a word called blog. And he said, don't be that guy that shows up in people's inboxes only every blue moon when you need a favor.
Yes.
and I try to advise my students to be in touch regularly with people, and not just people you think who will benefit from, because you never know what comes around eventually.
Absolutely. And that reminds me, we did talk about this a couple of weeks ago on a mastermind call, but the other thing is automation. So people are using automation to connect with people. And what thoughts can you give us on that? Like, where does it work and help you, and where does it show up as, oh my gosh, I'm just part of somebody's system?
It is something that I advise people to tread carefully about, because err on the side of non-scalable human intervention and automate things that are done, that are sometimes very simple stuff. Like if you click here and you ask for a PDF download, there's nothing wrong with an email automatically being generated with that PDF or a link to it. You don't need to necessarily have a human being coming back to the office next week and emailing that to you. The important part is the follow-up. If you have made some promises or connections or invitations for conversations or some kind of community expectation, then it's dangerous to either outsource it too much or automate it. Some people try to get away with outsourcing too much of their personal profiles online, and it becomes very generic, and it feels like, I follow some thought leaders and I understand that they cannot chat with me daily, but in some cases, I wouldn't even know if they really called me or texted me, because I got on their text system and I get very frequent updates about inspirational quotes and everything on text. And I don't know sometimes, is this really this person writing to me, or is it part of the system? And so my advice is to maybe mix it up and maybe have emails that come from your email newsletter come from a different email address than your main email address. This is something that I see different people do different ways, but I try to have my email address that I use with you is not the same email address that I use for my newsletter, even though both are branded. It is just to distinguish between the two and allow people to make a distinction.
Yes, like, oh, he's actually writing to me.
Yeah, of course, the newsletter could still say "Dear Kerrie" and "Dear first name."
Yeah, but we do switch off to things that we know have gone to hundreds or thousands of people, don't we? You know,
yes,
super engaging headline, we think, oh, he's not going to know if I look at it now or not. Whereas if I feel like you've sent me an email, oh, I need to check this. So hi to you.
It is, but in terms of other automations, I think we are getting to the stage where people will find more and more tools, not just like you use this scheduling system that I could pick a time that syncs automatically to your calendar and to my calendar. There are numerous tools like that. And I think most people see that as beneficial. I should add, however, I've seen comments or conversations on the social media where people have hated that concept. If people are trying to ask for a favor, they should not tell that person to go and schedule this event automatically, and they feel, some people get insulted by that. So you have to know your audience. I think it is, have you experienced that yourself?
Yes, and I think as you're saying that, I remember when, you know, these calendar apps were kind of new, but it also very much depends on the tone, and we need to be careful when we're just sending a text message or an email, because our intention is not always conveyed. And it might be that, like, I sent you a link to, you know, to schedule a time for today, because I know that that's easier for you, because you can see my calendar. It's like I'm giving you access to my calendar. You can go, oh, Kerrie's got time here, here, and here. This is what works for me, and because it shows up in your time zone. So I think if we understand that I'm giving you a convenient option rather than what time is it over there now? And okay, so it's that time here, and we try and work it out. But yeah, I know there have been messages from people that might say, it's the way that I'm telling you to go and get in my calendar that sounds like work for you, rather than offering a service to you.
Yeah. So even if you and I likely agree that this is making it easier for both parties, you sometimes have to think twice, not whether it is actually better for both parties, but how it is being perceived and how you ask, and maybe even ask, give a cop out. So what I suggest, if you're uncertain, is to say, if you like, I can send you a couple of times next week that we could do this, or you can click on this link, or is the other way. Could you please suggest some times that would work in the coming week? And then parentheses, or you can check the scheduling link. Just give an option.
Yeah, sometimes the option that I give people is, unless you have a calendar you'd like me to have a look at. So, feel free to send me your link. But definitely when there's different time zones involved, it's, a matter of convenience, but it's about communicating that, not... No, but it's about automating relationships. It depends on how much you know each other as well. And if you know each other very well, I think you can throw it out more casually without thinking twice about it. But especially if it's important and you're trying to sell something, maybe you should really try to tread carefully and maybe make it as easy as possible. Because one downside, if you send a scheduling link and you have 100 times available, it's more
more difficult for somebody to say no. You put them in an awkward position as well, because there is this famous Gary Larson cartoon series, and one of my favorites was that he sat by the office desk and with the phone in the ear and answered the phone and said, "No, Thursday's out. Thursday does not work for me. How about never? It's never good for you."
Yeah. Hopefully we're not having any of those conversations. Thank you for not saying never, but for actually just grabbing a time in my calendar, Niklas. I appreciate that.
But the bigger point beyond scheduling is like automation will present more and more opportunities. And I think it will be smart to use some of these, but it will be dangerous to overuse them. Yes. Depending on who you're dealing with. And I think eventually it will be our bots that will deal with other people's bots. So I may have a virtual assistant, not a person, but a virtual bot that I have programmed with access to my calendar, my preferences, and people I want to meet, and who is listed as okay to do XYZ in my world. And then that bot can talk to your bot.
Yes.
So it's just like in the movies, they say, my people will call your people.
I was going to say, it's not just in the movies. So we've got some friends, and when we're going to catch up, she'll say, oh, well, let's get out my people to talk to your people. And which is like her husband will talk to my husband, or, whoever is in charge of the calendar at the time. Yeah. But yes, it could be like, my bots will talk to your bots. And so in that instance, how can we, keep that professional touch and personal touch, to stand out in a very automated world? What are some of the personal touches that you use?
I think just one hack is to use video emails, and that's becoming increasingly popular, where you're actually recording with tools. I've dabbled a little bit with that. I haven't used it systematically yet, but I've gotten some of those myself, and I've been impressed by some creativity being displayed in terms of breaking through the clutter of standing out and being different. However, I wish in some cases when I got in such emails with video that they would summarize the bullet points of what was in the message, because I don't always have 3 minutes to open up a video and making noise and wherever I am. But that's one way. Images, use graphic images and your email and signature just standing out, and just show some reasons to why that person should care. It is a little bit of copywriting. It's not just giving away the whole story. It's a little bit about teasing, giving a preview of just a teaser in terms of what might be in it, what might be on the other side. And of course, there are experts in that regard in terms of getting people curious enough to actually move to clicking that link or connecting back.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
But don't forget the phone as well, because it is a cop-out for people that are uncomfortable making human connections to talk on the phone, because it's much more awkward if you get a no or don't get through. And it's easier to throw out an email, and if it's being ignored, you can always think it went to junk email and you don't take it as personally, perhaps. But sometimes picking up the phone is simply the best still.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing like even if it's a quick phone call to say, do you have time to chat? Can we make a time to chat next week? But it's just suddenly a personal connection, which I think really stands out when there are so many, less personal or impersonal connections.
Yeah, and also how to stand out is to show that you're willing to or interested in meeting in person, and use automation and communications digitally as a way to make it more likely that we will meet in person when geography and time zones align and planets align. And I think to make it, sometimes you just have to show up. And one of the best ways to actually connect with people, I've noticed, is to actually instead of saying, I could come to New York and meet you, you just go to New York, and then I'm on Fifth Avenue, and then you write from there. And then maybe you have multiple people you'd like to meet anyway, and combine sometimes pleasure with business. And just saying, it's much easier to break through the clutter if you happen to be just 5 blocks away. And I suppose, and this is sort of a take it or leave it offer. That I would love to catch up for a coffee. It's nothing awkward if they say no, because I couldn't have expected that they would keep their calendars clear in case I would show up in New York. And on the other hand, a lot of people think that, okay, instead of doing this someday, maybe let's do it now. And
absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I just had a friend who I've known since 2007. We've worked together a lot. He's got a very high profile and spoke at one of our recent conferences, but messaged me the other day and just said, hey, I'm going to be in Dubbo for the next 3 days. Are you around for coffee? And I went, oh no, I'm in Tasmania. And then Victoria. But of course, if I was in town, if I was anywhere near town, I would be there in a heartbeat. Because I think while we try and schedule things, sometimes there's nothing like the impromptu, and you just go, wow, what an amazing opportunity. Let's connect face to face.
Yeah, and it doesn't always work, because you also have people that get too many of those calls. I know a thought leader who lived in the Philippines for a number of years, and he said he had too many backpackers that happened to be on his island in southern Philippines, and he couldn't possibly meet all of them. So it's like it depends on who it is, of course, and sometimes sometimes it doesn't work out, but it's not a big deal. But that's one way to break through, to actually show up and visit people and stay connected, and not just rely on the digital connection.
That's right. And I think he would make time for you if you came to his island. However, we need to be careful that we're not doing that as a fangirl or a fanboy. Because then, yes, you might be amongst many who try and take that opportunity. It's always worth asking. So I just wonder, before we wrap up, since you have all of these digital marketing students at the university, and, I've connected with 4 amazing students there.
Yeah, thank you for having them.
Yeah, gosh, that was so much fun, and such beautiful girls. So I imagine quite a number of the students are either developing their own business or working in another business. So what are some of the things that they're doing to connect with, their customers, their fans, building their community online? Just tell us a couple of things that are working really well.
It's a huge variety in terms of fields they go into today. And clearly, as you know, it's no longer certain that they want to go for the corporate career with a big corporation and working for that for 30 years. But many of them are indeed very entrepreneurial, or joining companies that are tech startups, etc. And I think that sometimes connections are made in college that initiate those relationships, or through internships. And I have my son is the first year computer science student, and I encourage him to sort of network and go to events and get a varied set of experiences, because if you do that in person and then connect online as well, of course, because and with classmates as well, because you never know where they're going to end up, and you might help them, they might help you in the future. And in terms of networking strategies, some of them are surprisingly, to me, closed off from the World Wide Web. Many of my students are staying in closed networks where only their friends can see their updates on Facebook, Instagram, or other networks, and it wouldn't be available for the World Wide Web for privacy reasons, security reasons, or whatever. But it is, to many, a little bit surprising, because we see these stories in the media about the teenage stars on TikTok and that are breaking through and having millions of views. Of course, we have some of those as well that are going super public. But you should keep in mind that some people are still spending most of their digital interaction energy in closed rooms that is impossible for the world to discover. And I try to encourage students to at least open up some presence in other circles where connections of connections, and maybe even the world, can find something they do. And that is sort of one assignment I have. I call it personal branding assignment, where they are asked to go out and first audit, where are they present today? Who do they interact with? Are they sharing any content? If so, what type of content? And then review, what would you like to do in the future, career-wise, and how do you think your online profile today will help you in that regard? And can you change some of that? And then they journal their journey to actually improve their presence and come to a position where they're more likely to fulfill their own dreams, not my dreams, not your dreams, but their own dreams.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think just a couple of words I picked up on there is journal your journey, because often people don't pay attention to what's actually working or to what they're doing. But it's awesome when you can start tracking that and realizing the opportunities that you have, maybe that you've been missing or that you're stepping into, which is pretty exciting. And those 4 beautiful young women that I worked with from your college, your university, I love seeing them pop up on the different socials, whether it's LinkedIn or mostly Instagram, sometimes on Facebook. But, I see that they're doing great things, and, they're commenting or liking my things as well. And we're just expanding each other's world. And, now they have a friend in India because I had an intern there at the time. And
that's right. I know that they enjoyed working with you, and thank you for giving them an exposure. Thanks to digital interactions, they got an exposure from a very different world and a different industry that they would have otherwise been exposed to. Because before the pandemic, and many times my students, when they chose a business themselves, they walked across the street to the local pizza place. And I've had so many team projects about all the restaurants on the first street outside campus. I wanted to have them walk longer than their nose reached, and they found you.
Yes, and so I love that, because you've shared your early story of traveling as a young person with your family, and then going and backpacking and coming all the way to Australia, so the opposite side of the world. And you're really encouraging your students to do that in a digital sense at the moment while they're not traveling. But it's so great that you are walking your talk in so many ways, and you're teaching what you've been walking. So again,
well, I haven't been in Australia in a long time, but I hope to make it back soon. But I'm glad I took the trek to Singapore to meet you, because otherwise maybe we wouldn't have formed this mastermind together. So thank you.
Absolutely, yes. Well, you're welcome down under as soon as our government says that you're welcome down under, and well, maybe I'll see you over there at some time. But thank you for walking the talk. And so again, I would encourage our dear listeners to check out your LinkedIn profile and follow whatever links from there. You're doing great work in the world, Niklas, and I'm just delighted that you could chat with me today.
Well, thank you, Kerrie. And I love your questions as well. And it inspires me to try to live up to the expectations. Apparently, you think I walk the talk, but you can always walk a little bit further.
And as you said at the beginning, we keep walking. But as you said at the beginning, it's easier if you just be yourself. And I think that's a powerful takeaway to just complete on. So thank you again.
Well, thank you, Kerrie, and have a wonderful day. And if anyone wants to connect with me, I'm easy to find online.
Absolutely. We'll put all the links there. So thank you, my friends, for listening. And please feel free to connect anytime with questions, with recommendations. Who would you like me to chat with and ask more questions of? Of course, I have so many incredible people in my world, like Niklas and those that we share the mastermind with, and our Asia Professional Speakers community, our so many online and face-to-face communities. But we will continue the conversation, helping you to connect with confidence and make a bigger difference in the world. Thanks for listening.